My wife told the wedding hostess I was just the driver. I smiled, set down the gift, and walked back to my car. 2 blocks away, I pulled over beneath a row of sycamore trees, turned off the engine, and waited. They should have checked what was inside the box. The hostess looked at her tablet once, then again, scrolling with one manicured finger, like my name might appear if she gave the screen enough chances. It didn't. "I'm sorry," she said carefully, the way people speak when they know they are about to embarrass someone in expensive clothes. "I don't see you on the guest list. I was wearing a navy suit I had picked up from the tailor that morning. White shirt, dark tie, polished Oxfords. The watch my father left me. I had driven 45 minutes through Friday evening traffic with a silver gift box sitting on the passenger seat, wrapped in navy ribbon so cleanly it looked professional. "Could you check under Hart?" I asked. "Daniel Hart, or maybe Whitcomb. I'm Lauren's husband." That was when Celeste Whitcomb appeared. My mother-in-law stepped out from the entrance hall in a pale gold dress, diamonds at her throat, champagne glass in hand, smiling like she had been waiting all night for this exact inconvenience. "Did you honestly think you were invited?" she asked. 2 bridesmaids behind her went still. Celeste leaned closer. "Daniel, this is a family wedding. You were useful for errands. Don't confuse that with belonging." I looked past her. Lauren stood 6 feet away near the welcome table, beautiful in a slate blue dress, champagne in her hand, watching the whole thing. She saw my face. She saw her mother's smile, and she did nothing. The hostess turned toward her, confused. "Mrs. Hart." Lauren gave a small laugh. "He's just the driver," she said. "He's dropping off the gift." Something inside me went quiet. Not angry, not broken, quiet. I placed the silver box on the table with both hands. "Of course," I said. "Then please give them this." Then I turned around and walked back to the car. Here's what none of them knew about me. My name is Daniel Hart. I'm 36 years old, and I'm a senior forensic accounting consultant at a financial investigations firm in Boston. That means I spend my working life finding the things people try to bury inside clean-looking numbers. False invoices, shell vendors, misclassified transfers, escrow accounts that are missing fractions so small, most auditors glance right past them. Money has a language. Most people only hear noise. I hear the stutter. I am very, very good at my job. I'm also good at remembering things people assume no one notices. 3 months before my wife called me the driver in front of a wedding hostess. She flew to Napa for what she called a leadership retreat with 2 partners from her firm. I watched her pack too many dresses for a corporate weekend and kiss me on the cheek like we were still performing marriage for an audience that had already left. 2 hours after her car disappeared down the street, I walked into her home office. The house was dark, the kind of dark that makes every ordinary sound feel deliberate. The hum of the refrigerator, the click of the heating vent, my own breathing. Behind the framed law degree on Lauren's bookshelf was a wall safe she thought I didn't know about. I knew about it. I had watched her open it 2 years earlier, after a charity dinner. Half drunk and careless, her shoulder blocking the keypad, but not enough. I saw 4 numbers, then 2 more, reflected in the glass of a framed photograph behind her. I never wrote them down. I didn't need to. At 2:13 in the morning, I entered the code. The safe clicked open. Inside was a black laptop I had never seen before, a thumb drive taped beneath the upper shelf, and a stack of bank envelopes secured with a rubber band. That was the night I stopped being a husband with suspicions. I became what I had always been professionally, an investigator. I had been married to Lauren Whitcomb for 8 years before I understood that I had mistaken being needed for being respected. We met when I was 26, and she was 28, at a donor dinner for a children's legal aid nonprofit in Back Bay. Lauren was magnetic then, sharp, funny, controlled in a way that made every room adjust around her. She was finishing her MBA while working at her mother's consulting firm, already speaking about future acquisitions, and strategic growth, like the life she wanted, was simply waiting for her to claim it. I was making decent money then, not impressive money, but steady money. I paid for dinners when her bonus got delayed, covered half her rent for 3 months when she said cash flow was tight, built spreadsheets for her business plan, reviewed contracts at midnight, drove her to meetings when her car was in the shop. I told myself that was marriage. You carry more weight when the person you love is climbing. Celeste Whitcomb never let me forget that I was not from their world. She had money the way other people have, whether always present, always shaping the room. Her wealth came from corporate restructuring, but her true occupation was social positioning, charity boards, museum galas, private clubs, names that mattered. From the first dinner, she treated me like a useful mistake Lauren had made during a stressful season. Lauren saw it. At first, she apologized in private. Then she explained it. Then she stopped noticing. The first crack came at a client dinner, when I heard Lauren introduce me as the steady one behind the scenes. Everyone smiled like it was praise. I smiled too, because men are trained to accept being useful as a compliment. The second crack came when Lauren made managing partner at her firm. Celeste hosted a dinner with wine older than our marriage. She toasted Lauren's brilliance, Lauren's discipline, Lauren's bloodline. Not one word about the 8 years I had spent keeping the floor under her feet. On the drive home, I remember thinking one clear sentence. If this was the pattern, what would the pattern become? I filed the question away. I always file things away. The affair came first. Not because I was looking for it, but because people who think they are smarter than everyone else eventually get lazy. Lauren left her phone unlocked on the kitchen island while she showered. One message lit up the screen. Miles. Still thinking about your mouth in the conference room? I stood there for maybe 5 seconds, long enough for the old version of me to die without making a sound. Miles Greer was an associate director at Whitcomb Advisory, 12 years younger than me, all perfect teeth and tailored arrogance. He had been at our house twice. I had grilled steaks for him once. He had shaken my hand with the relaxed confidence of a man who had already decided I was irrelevant. I didn't confront Lauren. I'm a forensic accountant. I don't confront. I document. Over the next 3 weeks, the affair became obvious. Hotel charges buried under client development, late-night ride shares, calendar blocks with fake project codes, messages exported from a backup she didn't know was still syncing to our shared home server. But the affair was not what made my hands go cold. The money did. The night Lauren flew to Napa, I opened the wall safe and found the laptop. No branding, matte black, clean exterior. The kind of machine someone buys when they want no personal identity attached to it. I put on nitrile gloves, photographed the safe before touching anything, then opened the laptop. It took me 6 hours to understand the structure. 3 years of systematic embezzlement from escrow accounts tied to Whitcomb Advisory's acquisition work. Client funds skimmed in fractional amounts during large closings, small enough to avoid standard audit thresholds, then routed through shell vendors with names bland enough to disappear inside expense reports. The shells trace back to Celeste. Not directly every time. She was too careful for that. Sometimes through a Delaware foundation, sometimes through a management company, sometimes through a vendor account with no employees, no office, and no business purpose except receiving money. Lauren was in the emails. That was the part I stared at longest. Not copied accidentally, not misled, not adjacent. Participating, total diverted, over 36 months, $4.3 million. Of that, $250,000 had been moved through a shell called Whitcomb Event Strategies to pay for her sister Sienna's wedding. The orchids, the champagne, the string quartet, the lakefront venue, the custom gown, the honeymoon in Santorini, all of it was stolen. I replaced everything exactly as I found it. Then I went upstairs, lay beside my sleeping wife, and stared at the ceiling until morning. I spent the next 3 weeks building the kind of file that leaves no room for performance. No anger, no guesses, no dramatic language, just dates, accounts, signatures, routing numbers, timestamps, emails, vendor records, and the ugly little geometry of money moving where it was not supposed to move. I built it the way I build every investigation, assuming the person across from me would be rich, represented, and willing to lie. Tab A was the transaction map. Every diversion from a client escrow account matched against the corresponding acquisition closing, with timestamps, wire references, internal approval codes, and the exact percentage skimmed from each transfer. Tab B was the shell structure. Whitcomb Event Strategies, Northline Strategic Partners, Ashford Civic Foundation, 3 more entities that existed on paper and nowhere else. I printed registration documents, beneficial ownership trails, bank signatory records, and the overlapping addresses that tied them back to Celeste Whitcomb's private management office. Tab C was the communication archive, encrypted emails, recovered message fragments, calendar references, and internal notes, cross-referenced by date. Lauren's name appeared again and again, not as a confused spouse, not as someone pulled into her mother's mess without understanding it. As an operator. Tab D was the wedding money, vendor invoices, floral deposits, venue payments, private security, champagne orders, the custom gown, the Santorini reservation, Every beautiful piece of Sienna's wedding pinned to stolen client funds like evidence on a board. Tab E was mine. That one had nothing to do with the federal case. Not really, but I built it anyway. 8 years of mortgage contributions, rent transfers from the early years, loan payments I had covered when Lauren said liquidity was temporary, medical insurance premiums, renovation invoices, credit card statements. The quiet financial architecture of a marriage where I had been told, directly and indirectly, that my value was in what I could carry without making anyone uncomfortable. I calculated it all, not because I needed revenge, because I needed to see, in numbers, what my life had been trying to tell me for years. When I finished, the dossier was 312 pages. I printed it on heavy white paper, organized every section with clean tabs, made 3 encrypted digital copies, stored one with my attorney, one in a safe deposit box, and one on a drive I kept taped under the bottom drawer of my desk. Then I sat in my office at 3:00 a.m., looking at the stack. For the first time in 8 years, the truth was heavier than the lie. On a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks before Sienna's wedding, I drove to the federal building downtown and met Special Agent Marcus Hale from the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. I knew Hale from a previous case where I had served as an expert consultant. He was the kind of man who could read 40 pages of bank records without changing expression once. He read the first section while I sat across from him. Then he looked up and said, "How long did this take you?" 90 days from first suspicion, I said. 3 weeks from confirmation. He tapped one finger on tab A. You understand that once we open this, it goes where the evidence goes. You don't control timeline, optics, or outcome. I understand, and you need separate counsel. Criminal cooperation is not divorce strategy. I have one. Her name was Rebecca Sloan, a former federal prosecutor who had moved into high-asset divorce and financial litigation. When she first reviewed my file, she stared at Tabby for a long time and said, "You documented your own disappearance." She advised me not to confront Lauren. Do not threaten. Do not serve papers yourself. Do not give her the satisfaction of seeing anger and calling it instability. The divorce petition was filed quietly on a Thursday. Service was scheduled for the Monday after the wedding. By then, Rebecca said, Lauren would have more than one court to worry about. So I went home, made dinner, asked my wife how her day was, and listened to her lie without interrupting once. I am very, very good at waiting. The gift box took me 1 weekend to build. It was silver, 12 by 16 inches, heavy enough that anyone carrying it would assume crystal, maybe a serving set, maybe some tasteful object chosen by a man trying too hard to remain civil after being quietly excluded. I wrapped it with navy ribbon because Celeste loved navy. She thought it made money look old. Inside was a full duplicate of the 312-page dossier, printed in the same tabbed order I had given Agent Hale, tab A through tab E. Every wire, every shell, every email, every invoice, every page clean enough to survive a courtroom and ugly enough to ruin a wedding. Beneath the final tab, I placed a small Bluetooth speaker, no bigger than a hockey puck, connected to a burner phone programmed to auto-answer on the first ring. The speaker was set to full volume. The battery was fresh. The phone number existed in exactly one place. My head. I tested it twice in my garage with the doors closed. The first time, my own voice coming out of that little black speaker made my stomach tighten. The second time, it sounded like testimony. That was better. I knew the wedding timeline because I had built the first version of it 8 months earlier, before Celeste decided I didn't have the right touch for family presentation. I had made the vendor spreadsheet, arrival windows, floral staging, sound checks, family gift presentation, toast order, private security timing, backup weather plan. They removed me from the planning committee. They forgot to remove my access. At 8:45 p.m., according to the schedule I had created, the best man would bring family gifts to the head table. Sienna would still be in her gown. Lauren would be seated near her mother. The senior partners from Whitcomb Advisory would be 2 tables away, close enough to hear a champagne cork drop. I wrote a script once, then deleted it. I didn't need one. For 8 years, I had been called steady, useful, dependable, background, words people use when they want the benefit of your labor without the burden of your personhood. So I packed the box, I tied the ribbon, and on the night of the wedding, when my wife looked at a hostess and called me the driver, I understood one thing clearly. The timing had chosen itself. I was sitting 2 blocks away under a sycamore tree when the clock on my dashboard changed to 8:45. The venue lights glowed through the branches at the end of the residential street, soft gold against the dark. From where I sat, Sienna Whitcomb's wedding looked exactly the way Celeste had wanted it to look: expensive, controlled, untouchable. I put the burner number into my phone. My thumb hovered over the call button. For 1 second, I thought about turning the car around and going home. Not because I felt sorry for them, not because I was afraid, because there is a moment, right before a life breaks open, when even justice feels like violence. Then I remembered Lauren's face. Not when she called me the driver. Before that. The half-second when the hostess looked to her for clarification. And Lauren understood she could save me with one sentence. My husband, he belongs here. She chose not to. I pressed call, later, through witness statements, federal filings, and one deeply uncomfortable phone call with the Whitcomb advisory partner. I reconstructed what happened inside. The best man, a sunburned former lacrosse teammate named Pierce Calloway, carried the silver box to the head table exactly on schedule. He set it between Sienna and her new husband, laughing as if whatever was inside might be sentimental enough to mock. Lauren noticed the ribbon first. Witnesses said she leaned toward Celeste and whispered something. Celeste looked across the room toward the entrance, probably realizing I was gone. Then the phone rang inside the box. Pierce laughed and opened it. That was the kind of man he was. The kind who assumed every locked door belonged to him if he was amused enough to touch it. The moment he lifted the lid, the Bluetooth speaker connected. His voice came through first, confused and too loud. What the hell? Then mine filled the tent. I hope everyone is enjoying the $250,000 wedding. The room quieted in stages. First the head table, then the tables closest to it, then the string quartet, which apparently stopped halfway through a song because the cellist understood faster than everyone else that something had gone wrong. My voice stayed even, especially the partners from Whitcomb Advisory. Every orchid, every bottle of champagne, every yard of imported silk in that dress, every deposit on this lakefront venue, every night of the Santorini honeymoon was paid for with stolen client money. A fork hit a plate. Someone laughed once, softly, because people laugh when reality does not fit the room they are sitting in. Then Celeste stood. She moved quickly, according to 3 witnesses, not like a confused mother, like a woman who knew exactly which fire had started and where the gasoline was stored. She grabbed the dossier from the box and began tearing through it. Pages slid across the table. Tab A spilled onto the floor. Wire records, escrow references, vendor invoices, email transcripts, her own name appearing in black ink again and again, dressed in corporate language but naked in meaning. Lauren stood too. For a few seconds, she didn't move toward the box, she just stared at it. That detail mattered to me later. Celeste panicked. Lauren calculated. My voice continued. I know about Northline Strategic Partners. I know about Ashford Civic Foundation. I know about the escrow diversions tied to the Pembroke acquisition. I know about Whitcomb event strategies. The shell vendor created 8 months ago to make this wedding look like family money instead of evidence. By then, one of the senior partners had pushed back his chair. His name was Graham Ellison, 62 years old, 31 years in financial advisory work. He had the kind of face that turned gray before it turned angry. Lauren finally reached for the speaker. Pierce stepped back like the box had become radioactive. Celeste found the phone under tab E and snatched it up. But the speaker kept broadcasting from the table. I also know what you said tonight. Lauren. That was the pause I had planned. Not long. Long enough. You told them I was just the driver. Witnesses said Lauren looked toward the entrance then, as if I might still be standing there in my navy suit, waiting to be corrected. I wasn't. You were wrong. My voice said, I'm the whistleblower. The call ended. 3 seconds passed. Then the front gates filled with red and blue light. 4 black SUVs rolled up first, then 2 local police cruisers, then federal agents in dark jackets moved through the venue with the calm, practiced efficiency of people who did not care about flowers, seating charts, family names, or how much the champagne cost. Special Agent Marcus Hale entered first. I learned that from the filing later. I respected the choice. Hale understood optics. The senior partners were present. The documents were on site. The suspects were together. The professional circle Celeste had spent 3 decades impressing was sitting under one tent, watching the truth arrive with badges. Celeste tried to speak over them. That failed. People like Celeste believe volume is authority because, for most of their lives, it has been. Federal agents do not respond to social volume. They handcuffed her beside the head table, diamonds still at her throat, one torn page from tab B stuck under the heel of her champagne-colored shoe. Lauren did not scream. She looked at the papers, then at Hale, then at the partners, and I could almost see the machinery inside her, searching for a version of the story where she was still the victim. There wasn't one. Sienna stood in her stolen dress, both hands over her mouth, watching her wedding become a federal crime scene. I watched the lights move through the trees from 2 blocks away. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I didn't feel clean. I put the car in drive. Lauren had called me the driver. Fine, so I drove. Celeste Whitcomb was indicted on 14 counts. Wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit financial fraud, false statements, obstruction, a few others, Rebecca Sloan explained to me over the phone the morning the indictment was unsealed. Her voice calm, but edged with the professional satisfaction of someone reading a clean legal instrument. She's finished, Rebecca said. I was standing in my kitchen, making coffee in the house Celeste had once described as a starter home with ambition. I remember looking at the backsplash I had installed myself over 2 weekends, while Lauren was in Palm Beach for a strategy summit with Miles Greer. Is Lauren named? I asked. Rebecca paused for half a second. Yes, Lauren was indicted on 9 counts. The first version of her defense was exactly what I expected. She had been manipulated by her mother. She had signed what Celeste told her to sign. She had trusted internal finance people. She was a wife, a daughter, an executive under pressure, a woman caught inside a machine she didn't fully understand. That might have worked if Tab C had not existed. Tab C was the problem. Encrypted emails are not emotional. They do not care about family dynamics. They do not soften themselves because someone is beautiful on camera or good at sounding wounded in a conference room. They sit there, time-stamped and recoverable, saying exactly what was said. Lauren had discussed routing structures. Lauren had questioned whether one transfer was too large to stay beneath review thresholds. Lauren had suggested delaying a vendor payment until after the wedding because, in her own words, visibility will be lower once the event is behind us. That sentence appeared in 3 filings and 1 local business journal article. I read it once. Then I stopped reading coverage. There is a strange thing that happens when private betrayal becomes public record. People think exposure feels like relief. Sometimes it does. Mostly it feels like having strangers walk through the burned frame of your house and point at the furniture. Whitcomb Advisory did not collapse overnight, but it bled. 2 clients terminated contracts within the first week. A private equity fund publicly announced an independent review. The firm was placed under a consent decree and assigned a court-appointed monitor, Graham Ellison. The senior partner, who had gone gray at the wedding, became interim managing director after 3 other executives resigned. He called my office 17 days after the arrests. I almost didn't take the call. When I did, he said, "Mr. Hart, I don't know what to say, except thank you." I looked through the glass wall of my office at 2 junior analysts arguing over a spreadsheet. Then, don't say more than that, I told him. He didn't. Miles Greer tried to disappear from the story. He failed. He was not central to the embezzlement, but he was close enough to Lauren, and careless enough in written communication, that investigators found he had signed off on 2 vendor approvals without proper review. He lost his job. His license review opened, and according to someone who thought I wanted updates, his fiancée returned her ring. I did not celebrate that. I had made a rule for myself after the wedding. I would not feed on the wreckage. I had done what needed to be done. Anything beyond that was poison dressed up as justice. The divorce took 7 months. 7 months of filings, affidavits, forensic valuation, temporary orders, asset freezes, and Lauren's attorneys trying to turn my competence into cruelty. They argued I had planned the timing to humiliate her. Rebecca answered that I had reported federal crimes through appropriate channels, preserved evidence, and followed counsel's advice. They argued the wedding box was malicious. Rebecca answered that no criminal charge had been created by the box. The evidence already existed. The Bureau already had it. The box had merely introduced the truth to the room where stolen money was being spent. They argued I had emotionally abandoned the marriage before filing. Rebecca placed tab E on the record. 8 years of financial contributions, mortgage records, insurance payments, renovation invoices, transfers to cover Lauren's early business expenses, credit card statements from the period she called our building years, As if buildings rise by themselves when ambitious people stand near them, the marital home went to me, not as a gift, not as revenge, as math. I had paid 62% of the down payment, 70% of the renovation costs, and nearly all the carrying expenses during 2 separate years when Lauren's income was being redirected into investments she claimed were illiquid, but were, in reality, being used to mask liquidity problems created by fraud exposure. Rebecca got my contributions calculated to the dollar. With interest, Lauren signed the final agreement from a federal detention facility while awaiting sentencing. Her signature looked different from the one on our marriage license. Smaller somehow, less certain. Celeste fought longer. People like Celeste do not believe consequences are real until they arrive, wearing the one kind of authority they cannot charm, donate to, or invite to dinner. Her attorneys tried procedural arguments, evidentiary arguments, health arguments, reputation arguments, which was almost funny, considering reputation had been the altar she sacrificed everything on. In the end, she took a plea. Lauren took one too. 18 months for Lauren in a minimum security federal facility. 3 years supervised release, restitution, cooperation. More for Celeste, though sentencing had not yet happened when my divorce became final. On the day the decree came through, Rebecca emailed me a scanned copy with one line, "You are legally done." I sat at my desk for a long time after reading it. Not relieved exactly. Relief sounds too clean. I felt the way a man feels after carrying something heavy, so long that putting it down hurts, because his body has adapted around the weight. That evening, Lauren sent one message through her attorney. Rebecca forwarded it after asking if I wanted to read it. I said yes. It was short. "I hope someday you understand what you did to this family." I read it once. For a moment, I could hear her voice exactly, controlled, injured, certain that if she could make herself sound wounded enough, the wound would become mine to manage. 8 years earlier, I would have answered. 6 months earlier, I might have explained. That night, I placed the phone face down on my desk and opened the client file I had been reviewing before the message arrived. A manufacturing acquisition, 3 unusual vendor payments, 1 offshore account with a name that sounded fake because it was. I created a new folder labeled the first document tab A and went back to work. There is an end to this story, but it did not arrive with applause. Real endings rarely do. 14 months after the night at the wedding venue, I was sitting on the back porch of my house on a Sunday morning in late September, drinking coffee from a chipped blue mug and reading a case brief with my feet on the railing. My house. I still pause sometimes when I thought that. For 8 years, the place had been described in plural language when expenses needed paying, and singular language when credit was being handed out. Our mortgage when the bill came, Lauren's taste when people complimented the kitchen, our sacrifice when the roof needed replacing, her vision when Celeste brought guests through the front hall. Now the deed had one name on it, mine. The neighborhood was quiet. A kid down the block was learning to ride a bike, his father jogging beside him with one hand, hovering near the seat but not touching. Somewhere behind the fence, my neighbor's dog was barking at a squirrel with the moral outrage of a tax attorney. The light had that early fall quality I had always liked. Clear, angled, honest. My phone buzzed on the small table beside my coffee. A news alert. Celeste Whitcomb, sentenced to 84 months in federal prison. Restitution ordered in $4.3 million escrow fraud case. I read it twice, then I set the phone face down. No rush went through me, no triumph, no cinematic sense of the universe balancing its books. Just a quiet closing of a door somewhere far behind me. I thought about the wedding entrance, the hostess with her tablet, the silver box, the navy ribbon, Celeste's smile, Lauren's champagne glass. The exact second my wife could have said, "He's my husband," and chose instead to say, "He's just the driver," for a long time. I believed being useful was proof of being loved. I thought carrying weight without complaint made me dependable, and dependability would eventually be valued. That is the trap quiet men fall into. We confuse endurance with partnership. We confuse being needed with being chosen. But usefulness is not love. Silence is not respect. And a marriage, where one person is only seen when something needs to be carried, is not a marriage. It is labor with a ring on it. I finished my coffee before it went cold. Then I went inside, opened my laptop, and pulled up a new case file, a real estate fund, with discrepancies in its quarterly reporting. Maybe clerical error, maybe not. I created the first folder, tab A, before I started. I looked once through the kitchen window at the driveway. Empty now, quiet. Lauren had called me the driver. She was not entirely wrong. I had always been the one driving. I had driven the marriage through debt, ambition, silence, dinners where I was placed at the edge of the table, and years of being useful to people who mistook my restraint for permission. The difference, the one she never understood, was simple. Drivers choose the destination. If this story made you feel something, stay with the channel for more. This content was created by the Fish Tells Stories team for entertainment purposes only. Do not imitate or follow these actions in any form.